Hello, okay, so this is my first long video monologue, so bear with me if I sound a bit stilted. I'd like to tell you the story about a pair of ex-anarchists, ex-Animal Liberation Front convicts, Walter Bond and Camille Marino, who have launched the website Vegan Final Solution, a neo-Nazi platform trying to recruit from the vegan and animal liberation community. Here are some of the ideas they promote. Quote, "We advocate a third position beyond left and right-wing ideology. A third position that encompasses the best of both and disregards the rest. We advocate a hierarchy where those that exercise self-discipline and self-sacrifice for the good of animals and the earth are deemed more deserving of life than the gluttonous, selfish drones that shovel dead animals into their grotesque faces simply to satiate their lust for rotting meat. With hierarchy, we separate the wheat from the chaff. We advocate a total lack of concern for egalitarian issues. The whole laundry bag of activist and so-called total liberation issues not only seeks to put the focus right back on the worthless people, but also undermines the animal's safety by making society more cohesive and functional." So, heaven forbid it becomes more functional. But classic fascist ideology, plus a bunch of dog whistles to Nazi code speaker, final solution, third positionism, and life unworthy of life. Also, letters he would send from prison even had Nazi propaganda on the back, so that's always fun. So, why am I talking about this? I think the case study of groups who supported or continue to support them is interesting. Walter Bond was supported by the group Unoffensive Animal in a hopeful disregard for his fascist leanings. They were convinced by his support group that his early fascist writings were just a short-lived cause of traumatic prison conditions. They encouraged vegans to send letters of support and buy his book, allowing their respect for his actions to get in the way of transparency and accountability. He was, and still is, being promoted by the North American Animal Liberation Front press office, supportwalter.org, and Forward to Eden. And finally, listed on the website for people they view as friends and allies are Gary Yourofsky and Black Rose Belarus, obviously believing they share some common cause. So, what commonalities can we find among all these groups? Well, for one, a strong commitment to vandalism as a campaign tactic, but potential tolerance for violence which goes further than that. Now, disclaimer, I'm not saying all graffitiing is wrong or all revolutions are bad. I'm not even saying there's a risk of thousands of die-hard vegan anarchists becoming neo-Nazis. I am saying there's a risk of politically ignorant people who glorify violence, like Gary Yourofsky's apolitical misanthropy, finding common cause with eco-fascists and not seeing the harm they're doing promoting this shit. Like, Gary came out with the belief that all prisoners should be executed because we can't feed them vegan food. That's just like fascism 101, basically. I think the few revolutionary groups who are promoting this Nazi website should be a wake-up call, and so an issue we should work to untangle for how people get duped into first glorifying propaganda by the deed, bodily harm and violence for the animals today, where it would be completely unethical and counterproductive, and then find common cause with Nazis. So, I think we need to do a better job of explaining where some direct action goes overboard and becomes both unethical and ineffective, as well as checking in on our friends who look to be going down a bad path and provide them with the support they need. So, what are some solutions we can look to? Well, one important part is putting social pressure to bear on groups, organisations and content creators. We need to discourage excuses that could easily lead to this happening again. People's appreciation for Gary's speech turning them and others vegan also got in the way of people condemning him for his support for violence, his wishing rape on people and punishment, and calling Palestinians psychopaths and their rights supporters insane. As well, Anonymous for the Voiceless made a post about the Ukrainian man who took a bunch of people hostage at gunpoint until the president made an online post promoting the movie Earthlings, just asking the question as to whether it was a success or a failure for the animals, without clearly condemning his actions. It's really worrying that hundreds of vegans on Facebook would comment in favour of the Ukraine hostage taker and have their profile public, showing police everything about their life. It shows both the level of unethicalness and the naivety that could likely easily be swayed into promoting an edgy neo-Nazi who hides the real outcomes of their politics only slightly. Finally, it's important to make people aware of when the person they're following has far-right leanings, so they aren't sucked down the rabbit hole of bad justifications without realising where the end conclusion is leading. I'll put a link in the description to an article for further reading on racism in the vegan movement. The second part of what needs to happen, I think, is deprogramming those individuals who glorify violence. So we could ask, how does someone begin to take on beliefs which glorify violence? Well, some examples we could think of could be obsessively watching animal cruelty videos, being insulted by friends and family over your vegan diet, and not being able to avoid seeing people eat meat. We could simply do a better job of checking in on newly vegan friends and promoting spaces for them to find people to talk to. Remind them they were blindly ignorant once too, so we need to have compassion for the perpetrator in this situation. Now, how does someone potentially work up to taking unethical violent acts? Well, we can imagine blocking foxes from getting mauled to death, so gaining the confidence to get into standoffs with fox hunters. Similarly with blocking fascists marching through immigrant neighbourhoods. Now, disclaimer again, I'm very much pro hunt stopping and protesting fascists, obviously. I'm pro people getting active and feeling invested by protecting each other and foxes. But I also know people who get obsessed. And all I'm saying is don't be afraid to bring up with your friend that they may need to take a break or could be turning people away with their not comprehensible rants on Facebook. Get talking to them about other campaign tactics they can engage with for a time. Remind them the best advocacy tool we have is just shining a light on their cruelty and defending the victims. The few fox hunters we can annoy into not wanting to go on the hunt again pales in comparison as a goal to the amount of people we can get to question their meat eating by just showcasing their cruelty and showing how a fox or multiple foxes' lives were saved. Now, what are the philosophical justifications for violence? Well, for one, self-defense by proxy. So reasonable grounds that when confronting systemic violence, you are preventing the total number or rate at which animal lives experiencing unjust cruelty stays the same or goes up. I don't think we can say this is true of today. Or how about reasonable grounds that there was no way of avoiding injury to the perpetrator, or any potential injury would be less than the well-being gained for the life saved? I don't think this is true of today either. You could grant that in a hypothetical future, if we were to get to a place where 99% of the world were vegan, and less animal products being produced causes a drop in demand, yet we still haven't made meat eating illegal for whatever reason, then you could risk injury to the perpetrator by citizens arresting them, while you free the animal where there was no other option than risking potential injury. Because the value in that situation would clearly be that the sentient animal being free to live in a sanctuary is greater. Another defence someone might claim is desire for a war of self-determination. I don't think we say animals can conceptualise a tactical war to achieve rights, so they can't be said to desire it. We aren't even able to alleviate their suffering like we could human prisoners, with the optimistic notion that direct actions done now in other places may one day lead to an end to their suffering. You could grant in the socialist case if 99% of society had been fully socialised and a previous factory owner had locked themselves in and was refusing to move for wanting to employ only who they like and keep the profits for themselves, some force in picking them up and moving them outside would be acceptable. Obviously, revolutions are a lot more complicated than this hypothetical, and I do commend cases like the Kurdish uprising in northern Syria, who took power from a regime who had rolled tanks on demonstrators and outlawed teaching of their native language. But even in the human case, there are key foundations you need to work from, like the likelihood of outside states coming to your aid. Otherwise, you could just be giving the oppressor the flimsy excuse it desires to commit even worse horrors, as was the case with the Rohingya militants who ambushed a police checkpoint, resulting in army and citizen campaign to burn down many villages, plus murder and rape those that couldn't get away. As well as a responsibility to put down arms after winning political freedoms, and a majority are in favour of diplomacy through electoral politics, like in Northern Ireland today. Much of the problem, I think, is animal rights activists confusing these two arguments. But I ask you, what do you think? What other ways can you think of for talking someone down from their beliefs glorifying violence? Finally, in my closing arguments, I just say, even if it could be argued that a war of terror, killing those involved in animal agriculture, was the easiest route to reducing the number of animals bred into living horrible lives, I would still say it's ethically wrong to be the person who takes another's life just because it's the easiest way. You could have worked to become president and outlawed it with one signature. You could have inspired 1,000 liberators to break every cage. It's an act of self-harm to treat life with such disregard, when you could have been that same deluded person, shrouded in the justificatory trappings of society, treating your behaviour normally. What I see is vegans in mourning for the animals, angry and wanting to find an outlet for their anger. After the vegan activist Reagan Russell was killed, many ALF actions happened in response, and if taking the risk to slash slaughterhouse truck tyres in the dead of night is how you develop a stronger bond with a group of people and gain the confidence to do amazing things like travel the world and learn from other liberation struggles, then I'm all for it. But I don't think the way we win today is treating a cold bureaucratic system with equally cold disregard in whose life we had the resources to be able to intimidate this week. Time on earth is the greatest gift people have, to make mistakes and learn from them. So I could never condone risking injury to people when fighting such a monolith as the animal agriculture industry today. So that's the video. Let me know your thoughts in a comment down below. All the best. Peace.